Hello Year 10s. This video you can use to help you write your assignment that you have on at the moment called Energy Efficient Homes. This video is just going to go through part A of this assignment. Part A, question 1, asks us to explain what is meant by the concept of energy efficiency. So pretty much what this section wants you to do is you need to write 2 paragraphs. In the first one I'd be talking about what energy is, so providing some sort of definition of energy. Okay, and if I just slide over to this screen here, I've done a few notes up here to help you. Talk about what energy is, provide a definition. This includes getting you to identify how energy, in pretty much electrical energy, is produced in Australia and discuss some of the resources that we have to produce electrical energy. Okay, and I've put one example there, coal. There are many other examples that you need to research and look up yourself to complete this assignment. Your second paragraph needs to talk about what energy efficiency is. So this means that you need to provide a definition for energy efficiency. Then you need to discuss why energy efficiency is an important concept for people to consider in their own homes. Okay, so they're the 2 main paragraphs that you need to work on there. You need to keep in mind that your word count is between 600 and 800 words. So those need to be 2 relatively short paragraphs that get straight to the point. Our question 2 is sort of broken into, it's got 5 parts, but it's really only 2 parts. Okay, so question 2A says gaining, using and losing energy in a household. So this question wants you to identify the major energy sources from which the typical Australian households receive their energy. Okay, so that's pretty much relating to what you would write about in the first paragraph of your assignment. Okay, and then so identify the major energy sources from which typical Australian households receive their energy for in and around the house and for their transport needs. So you need to consider what the energy sources are, and also consider what energy sources are used to transport these around. Okay, so all those would go in the first column. You produce a table like this in your assignment, okay, and all the sources of energy would go in here. So for example, at the end of this I had coal. Okay, I would just put a space and I would write coal in there as the next source of energy, and you would just list them there like that. Part B says identify the energy forms for those sources. Now, this goes back to your year 7, 8 and 9 science classes where we looked at energy, okay, and forms of energy. So we actually have 2 major categories of forms of energy. We have potential and we have kinetic. You need to look at what forms of energy, you can use this diagram, actually come from the energy sources that you provide. So for example, for wood, okay, wood itself, we would burn it to produce energy. So we would actually say that it has chemical potential energy stored in it, okay? So we come down to potential energy and we would say that it's actually chemical potential energy. Now you need to go through and do the same thing for all your sources using this table. I would say that you will find that you'll have a lot of double ups. Okay, you might have a few that have chemical potential energy. You may have 1 or 2 others that have other types of forms of energy. Okay, so that's part 2, A and B, developing a table that looks just like this. C, D, and E can all be done or presented in a table that looks just like this. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to get a list of all the appliances that you use in the house. So there's some examples provided here. Okay, and you would just put them in the appliance column of your table. Then you need to look at the major energy forms provided. Okay, in a washing machine we have heat. Okay, and if we go back to this table, thermal, that falls under the thermal category. Okay, it's also called heat energy. Okay, and mechanical energy are the 2 main energy forms provided by a washing machine. Okay, heat and mechanical, because we have, it heats things up. Okay, might have hot water, and it also moves, it spins around. Okay, mechanical falls under the category of motion. Okay, it's also called mechanical energy. Some additional forms of energy that we have, and this looks at this is looking now more at our useful and non-useful types of energy. Some additional forms of energy for a washing machine include sounds, so the beeps, sound, the noise that it actually makes when it spins, any wasted heat. Okay, if we've got objects moving, there's usually some sort of heat produced, and maybe light, the lights on the top of the machine or the front of the machine that you can see. Okay, then what you need to do is you need to determine whether these are actually useful energies. So a beeping sound that it makes tells us that the load of washing is finished. Okay, so it's actually useful. The sound that it makes when it spins is actually non-useful. The heat that it produces when it spins is not useful. The light that it produces is useful because we use those lights to determine what setting that we're putting our washing machine to. The final thing that you need to do in this part lists the energy conversions that are taking place in the device. So what this means is that you need to list, it'll be almost like a chain of energy conversions. You need to list those. So on this one, we've got, it's abbreviated, but it goes from electrical energy, and that electrical energy is put into the washing machine and converted to mechanical energy, okay, which means that it starts moving. That mechanical energy then produces waste heat, okay. We also have electrical energy producing heat, and we also have electrical energy producing light. So you need to look at the conversions. What is the electricity converting to each time? In this case, we've got electrical to mechanical, which produces waste heat, electrical to heat energy, okay, and electrical to light energy. So you need to go through all of these appliances and list the major forms of energy, what additional forms of energy they produce, identify whether those additional forms of energy are useful or non-useful, and then look at the energy conversions for each of the appliances. Your last section, section F, you need to identify the most common pathways of undesirable heat loss from your house, and the way that your house gains heat from the outside environment. Okay, so you could do something like you could do another table if you wanted to and have two columns. So you do something like this. Go to insert table, just have two columns, and you might have heat loss, and then ways heat's gained in your house. One example of heat loss in your house would be something like, leaving, or you could put something in like thin walls. If you're heating your house and you had thin walls, you'll lose heat through those walls through to the outside. Okay, that's why we insulate walls. So that's one example. I'm only going to leave it at that. I'll give you one example. The ways heat can be gained is things like, an obvious one would be the sun. If you're air conditioning your house, you would gain heat into your house through sort of thermal radiation. So if you leave a window open, heat will get into your house and it will start warming things up. So you could say thermal radiation from the sun, and that's one example of how heat is gained. I'm going to leave it at that for that question because I want you guys to research that part yourself. So that gives you some sort of idea for what you can do for F. Now, the last part of part A, ways of reducing energy efficiency in your home. So ways of reducing energy inefficiency, in your home. So suggest 4 ways of reducing heat loss and 4 ways of reducing heat gain in your home. So this again relates back to this question here. Okay. Suggest 10 practices / behavior changes needed to prevent inefficiency / wasteful use of energy. So it says here that you can present these in bullet point form, in dot points, and that can relate to things like turning TVs off when you're not using, etc., etc. I'm not going to go into it because you should be able to think of 10 practices and behaviors yourself that you can come up with to as to how you can prevent inefficiency and wasteful energy. So that's all of part A that you need to do at the moment. So hopefully this video helps you a little bit with that.